It wasn't supposed to matter. Just another congressional hearing. Another round of statements meant more for clips than clarity. Another lineup of names on placards that would blur together by evening. But Representative Jasmine Crockett noticed something before it even began. The hallway outside the hearing room was quieter than usual. Not solemn, not reverent, just braced. And when she stepped through the doors, she understood why. Kash Patel was already seated. Not testifying. Not under oath. Just there. Ready. The room was full, but it wasn't restless. It was tilted, like something had already been decided behind the eyes of people who were pretending to still be neutral. Jasmine sat down at the end of the row. No papers in front of her. No dramatic pause. Just breath. She had been in rooms like this before. But something about this one. The air didn't hum. It watched. The chairman opened the floor. Formality. Protocol. Then the mic passed. And Kash Patel began to speak. Calm. Controlled. Constructed. The kind of calm that doesn't ask for attention. It takes it. He fielded the first questions easily. Not because they were simple. Because he answered like someone who didn't care whether you agreed. Only whether he finished. Then came her name. Representative Crockett, your time. Jasmine leaned forward. No smile. Just clarity. Mr. Patel, let's skip the choreography. You've made it clear in interviews that you believe this committee is a circus. Kash raised an eyebrow. If it walks like one. Laughter from one row. Not loud. Just enough to set tone. Jasmine didn't blink. Is that why you're here? To perform for a ring you already think is rigged. Kash looked at her. I'm here to speak where the noise is loudest. So at least someone might hear what's real. The room shifted. Not physically. Emotionally. Because this wasn't going to be a script. This was going to be a decision, moment by moment, about how much silence could hold. Jasmine asked, and what, exactly, is real about labeling the elected officials here a joke? Kash said, real is recognizing that some people made it here by raising their voice, not raising the level. She sat back. Just slightly. Say that again. He didn't flinch. Some of you made it here by being loud. That doesn't mean you belong. The silence tightened. Jasmine leaned in. Not with anger. With precision. Be specific. If you have something to say, stop editing. Kash looked at her and said it. You're not here for clarity. You're here for show. And frankly, if the show's over, maybe you should go back to the zoo you came from. That moment didn't break the room. It froze it. Not because it was loud. Because it was plain. And Jasmine Crockett didn't raise her voice. Didn't fumble for reaction. She just said, that's the difference between you and me, Mr. Patel. You walked into this room to provoke. I walked in already knowing what it cost to stay. The air didn't crack. It shifted. Because suddenly the insult wasn't the point. The reply was. Kash Patel didn't flinch. He leaned back in his seat like someone who thought the line had landed. But it hadn't. It had just sat there. Heavy. Visible. The kind of sentence that doesn't need to echo because it already said too much. Jasmine Crockett didn't touch her mic. Didn't raise her voice. She said, where I come from, we don't walk out of rooms when someone tries to reduce us. We stay seated and make sure they hear what they try to ignore. No applause. No outrage. Just a different kind of stillness now. One that didn't wait for permission. One that held. The committee chair shifted in his seat. Someone coughed near the press row. But no one interrupted. Because whatever had just happened wasn't finished yet. Kash crossed his arms. I didn't name anyone. If the words felt close, maybe that says something. Jasmine said. They felt close because they were meant to. And you're right. It does say something. About you. She leaned forward now. Steady. Centered. You walked in expecting performance. You thought I'd rise to the bait. That I'd fight to prove I belong here. She didn't blink. I don't have to. Kash smirked, faint. You're very composed for someone who just got insulted. Jasmine replied. Where I'm from, we've been called worse in quieter rooms. The insult isn't new. The microphone is. That line didn't land like a comeback. It landed like a reminder. Because suddenly the audience wasn't just watching a hearing. They were watching two different versions of power collide. One built on provocation. The other on refusal. Kash tilted his head. You think I'm intimidated by that kind of line? Jasmine's voice didn't change. No. I think you're surprised it didn't come with anger. Just clarity. Someone at the back of the room stood. A staffer, maybe. Or maybe someone who just couldn't sit still anymore. The committee chair tried to move on, but the room didn't follow, because something had shifted, and Jasmine hadn't raised her voice. She had just decided not to give the moment away. The chair tapped his gavel. Once. Then again. Not to silence chaos. To interrupt stillness. Because the silence wasn't neutral anymore. It was focused, held in one direction. Jasmine didn't shift. She didn't adjust her tone. She said, "I've sat in rooms that weren't built to hold my voice. But I stayed in them. Not to be tolerated, to be heard." Kash replied, arms still folded. "You're being heard now. Enjoy it." Jasmine didn't look at him. She looked at the room. "That's the part you don't understand. I'm not enjoying this. I'm enduring it. For everyone who's ever been told that presence was permission to be dehumanized." She let the sentence breathe. Not to dramatize. To finish it completely. Someone near the media bench exhaled sharply. Not loud. Just noticeable. Kash said, "You're turning this into theater." Jasmine looked at him. "No. I'm refusing to let it stay a circus." The words didn't rise. They didn't need to. Because Kash Patel had made noise. And Jasmine Crockett had brought weight. There's a difference. He leaned forward slightly, still trying to recenter the frame. "So now what? You play the victim? Let the headlines write the hero arc." Jasmine answered, "I'm not here for a headline. I'm here because silence would have been easier, and I didn't choose easy." The chair started to redirect again, but paused, because even he knew, interrupting her now would feel like more than procedure. It would feel like participation. So he stayed quiet. Kash tried once more. "You think your words erase mine?" Jasmine shook her head. "Your words don't need to be erased. They revealed everything. I just made sure no one missed it. That was it. Not a line. Not a win. Just presence that refused to flinch." And in that stillness, the room finally understood. This wasn't a clash. It was a lesson in what power looks like when it doesn't need to raise its voice. The hearing continued. At least, technically. Other members spoke. Other questions were asked. Other answers were recorded. But the room was still sitting in something it hadn't named yet. Not outrage. Not discomfort. Recognition. Because Jasmine Crockett hadn't changed the topic. She had changed the terms. And no one could find the rhythm again. The insult wasn't being debated. It was being remembered. In real time. Across the city, the clip hit air within the hour. But not clipped. Not captioned. Just posted. C-SPAN raw feed. No intro. No framing. Just Jasmine's face, steady. And her sentence. "I'm not here for a headline. I'm here because silence would have been easier. And I didn't choose easy." The reactions didn't start loud. They started quiet. Shared. Messaged. Quoted one line at a time. A teacher in Atlanta paused the news feed in a high school civics class. Pointed at the freeze frame. Then said, "That is what it looks like to stay. Even when the room doesn't offer safety." A mother in Houston texted the video to her college-age daughter with a single caption. "This is how you carry yourself when they try to take your name from the inside out." And on the House floor the next morning, no one said the words. But everyone had heard them. Kash Patel gave no apology. Only a clarification. "I didn't mean it racially. I was referencing the chaos. The energy." But by then, the room had already moved on from defending the language. Because Jasmine Crockett hadn't argued about what the words meant. She had answered what they revealed. And she hadn't raised her voice. She had just made sure it stayed unmistakable. The news cycle rolled on. Other stories took headlines. Other arguments took airtime. Other hearings unfolded with the same format, the same microphones, the same choreography. But something from that room stayed. Not the insult. The silence after it. The part where no one knew what to say, and Jasmine Crockett didn't wait for permission to say it anyway. Weeks passed. The clip wasn't viral. It was permanent. Still being played. Still being quoted. Still being taught. Not because she clapped back, but because she refused to collapse. A podcast host summed it this way. He brought a line. She brought a mirror. A student in Chicago wrote a paper for a political science class titled, "The Cost of Staying Seated, Power Without Applause in Modern Discourse." And someone in the House cloakroom, no cameras, no mic, leaned over to Jasmine days later and said, "You didn't swing." And somehow, that's what hit hardest. She didn't respond. Not because she was being cold, because the moment was over, and she hadn't come to perform it again. Jasmine Crockett never gave a soundbite about what happened, never posted a clip, never framed it as a victory. When asked in a quiet interview what she thought of the moment, she simply said, "He said what he needed to. I said what I wouldn't take. That's enough." And it was. Because in a building made for speeches, the most unforgettable ones are sometimes the ones that stay still. Not for silence, for dignity.